Hello there, this is Sassafras, and this is the Heart of Witchcraft podcast. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for listening to this. It's nice to see this kind of grow and expand. My analytics is telling me that now there are listeners in the UK, in Australia, South Africa, Canada, and the Netherlands, in addition to the United States. So it's always really exciting to see where this goes. Feel free to reach out to me at So on Twitter, it is at heartwitchcraft, or you could try me at heartofwitchcraft@gmail.com. I always love getting messages, and questions are particularly useful. In fact, this whole episode is based on some questions. Actually, it was a few people who kind of asked a similar sort of thing, and so I'm going to try and address that today. So these questions came in, and often it kind of turns into the questions are amorphous. Each person has their own way of wording their particular concern or what they would want to be addressed here. In any case, what this is I'm going to try and present to you the most simple form of worship that I could imagine. And it's actually going to be fairly personal for me, because this is not different much at all from what I do. The differences are going to be more or less what each one of you does in your own private practice. And this is the sort of thing that I do at home when for a variety of reasons. It's not like, it's not necessarily a regular thing. It happens fairly regularly, fairly often, but it's not something that I would say, it's not an every Sunday activity. For me, it kind of gravitates around feelings of gratitude toward the divine, or perhaps I have a request, or perhaps I have a concern. I mean, any number of things. But this is what I want to present to you here is a simple worship. That's it. No bells and whistles. I want to try and keep this as absolutely uncomplicated as possible, because you can always add to this. You can always add your own flavor, and you're gonna, whether you like it or not. There's going to be a way that you pronounce something. So many different ways in which all of us are unique, and I think that that's really fascinating, really interesting. And a secondary part here is actually, so this is kind of going to be a very generic sort of presentation for how to do worship. A lot of folks nowadays, particularly, there are a lot of pagan reconstructionist movements who want to try to reproduce the historic form of worship of a particular deity, or of a particular pantheon, of a region's deities, of what have you. And that's good and well. A lot of the same sorts of notes that you may find in what I'm presenting here, you'll be able to find in other types of paganism and other types of worship of deities. You can find elements here and there. So in a lot of ways, this kind of covers everything. This is going to be eclectic. My purpose here was not to be where I and how I developed this didn't have to do with taking from different practices. It's just kind of what I found myself doing and hitting on the notes that I thought are important in my own personal path. Sure. Some people have asked, well, who should I be worshiping? Who should be my god or goddess? Who should I be calling to? That sort of thing. Well, in a lot of ways, by keeping it this basic and kind of generic isn't the right word for it, because it's not like this is like a common template which is applied, but you could. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, I like to think of it as perhaps this is a way to search. You could ask yourself, who comes? Who is coming to be present? Who am I reaching out to on one hand, but also who's reaching out to me? And does that become obvious to me, or are there any clues that I can pick up on and do some research on and come back with and continue to think and meditate upon throughout? So in any case, in a lot of ways, worship is the invitation of a guest. Hospitality is one of the most common elements in human. There's something sacred to hospitality and showing hospitality in the human species, as it were, or so it seems to me. And so in a lot of ways, this is kind of doing that. It's kind of akin to setting a place at the table for an unexpected guest. And so in a lot of ways, you might be able to view the divine in that fashion if you don't have one in particular in mind, or you may find yourself calling out to this goddess or that god, and you feel very strongly that it was a different presence that was there, and you may have to research exactly who came to see you. So in any case, a lot of a simple worship would be, it can be in the form of a prayer or an offering, and that's kind of the context that this takes on here. There's a bit of a give and take with the divine, and you find that throughout history and in different cultures, where if you want good luck, or if you've received good luck, you can give, you give your offering for that in anticipation of receiving it later, or you give your offering in thanks for having received something. There's that give and take relationship with spirits, with deities, that humans across culture always seems to crop up, at least for me in my own studies. And I do a lot of studying of this sort of thing. This is not going to be there's no compulsion in this. We're not making any demands. This is one to be done kind of in the attitude of gratitude. Oh my goodness, it's terrible. The attitude of gratitude? Sure, I'll say that. This is done with airs of feeling humble and wanting to extend an invitation and that sort of thing. So, and it's not because you want a pat on the head because you've been good and you got your treat, or you're asking for a treat. That's not really the kind of relationship that I don't really think. I mean, a lot of people could look at the divine as being like Sky Dad, Earth Mom. And there's really nothing wrong with that. In fact, if that's the kind of paradigm that things take for you, run with that. See where that goes. You see it a lot in the language that you see in various prayers across different religions and whatnot, where the deities do have a direct parentage relation with the worshiper. In a lot of ways, it can be an adopted one. It doesn't have to be direct. This episode is not dealing with issues regarding cultural appropriation. That's a complicated topic. I think it's more complicated than it seems to be. It's not necessarily as simple as, this group burns sage, and so it isn't right to continue that practice. It kind of turns on to, for me, like appropriation starts to be a problem when you claim to be originating the practice or profiting off of a particular activity, or there is a level of ignorance which can come in if you honestly don't know where it's from. But on the other hand, all folk religion, where it comes from isn't important. What's important is how it works and that sort of thing. I mean, I don't want to preach about appropriation. Is it good? Is it bad? Which side would a person take? I kind of think things are a lot more shades of gray than it seems. But of course, I think that a dialogue on the subject is healthy and good and useful, but I'm digressing way too much, I'm sorry. So, a lot of this is about you're going to be putting effort into trying to develop a relationship, and so as part of the effort, if you do this and you feel nothing, then you should still continue to do this or something like it, and you can make tweaks absolutely every time, and you can always kind of note how things go. It's not a bad idea to record, always write down and record things that you do and how things go and what sticks out to you. Having a journal is having a journal or a magical diary or what have you is very, very important in the practice of witchcraft in the modern day. If only so that you can look over time. I always think it's very rewarding to look back on earlier sassafras and what he thought and what his opinions were and what worked for him, and then seeing how that's changed, or who knows, maybe I'll go back and try things the way I used to do them, and maybe it feels different now, maybe that suit fits differently. Eclectic is not a bad word. Eclectic is not a four-letter word, haha. What it is basically, in this context, it's standing out and saying, I'm not mimicking, at least not deliberately. I'm not trying to copy another system and kind of fit this in. I'm sure that you could find similarities between this and that, and that's because of doubtless it's because of things that I've read that have influenced me that I'm unconsciously biased by. That's not a bad thing. You're always going to have that. You cannot be subjective. No. You cannot be objective. You will always be subjective. You cannot escape that. That's a human thing. We can't ever step outside of our bodies and survey the situation unless you're very heavy into trance, and that's another episode. But so in any case, we're going to have some materials for this. We're going to want to have a number of little bowls, a number of little small cup type things in order to hold some water. We're going to want a little dish for some salt. We're going to want some incense and the ability to burn that incense, like a lighter or something like that. You can have a candle if you like, or an incense coal, whether you have stick incense or loose incense, I mean, either one's perfectly fine. Because I do think it's important to kind of represent all four elements here. And so you have the salt, which is for earth. You have water, which is obvious. The incense is complicated because the incense is the kind of the combination of fire and air, but that's combustion. But combustion is that, and you are applying one to create the other, and their smoke is like the fused essence of that. And you'll find later on that we add the salt into the water and then stir that around, and that combines as well. Before this, and this is one of my key points, as it were, is cleansing. You must wash your hands at the very least. I'm keeping it very simple. I'm not saying that you need to go to get yourself the spa treatment or, do some crazy elaborate ritual of cleansing in itself. No. Wash your hands. Make sure your hands are washed. Wash your hands exclusively for this purpose and not for any other reason. You're washing your hands to prepare for what you're doing. Then you're going to be setting an atmosphere. Perhaps you could put on music. Here's where you could initially light the incense. That's fine, because the incense and its scent, its aroma, will enrich the experience and will color your thoughts and your musings and what you feel and that sort of thing. And these are essential elements. The type of incense is not particularly important. Hopefully it's something that you like. All of these things and all that's throughout this, we don't present to the gods something we ourselves don't like, something we hate. We are a participant in this, and we are sharing with them what we like. And for me, that kind of a connection, there's some sympathy back and forth. You're offering them a seat at your table, which means that you are the preparer of that food, as it were. And so, your home cooking is not something to be ashamed of. Absolutely not. At least not as far as this goes. And if you read otherwise, if you feel otherwise, but by all means, run with it. Let me know what you do. I love this stuff. As you light the incense, as you have lit the incense, you have a bit of an atmosphere going here. You're going to be invoking the deity or the spirit or the guest, and you can phrase it that way if you so choose, to guide and join you in your rite. And as you do, if you have a little bell, that's wonderful. You can do that. You don't have to ring a bell, but I think that in some ways that kind of delineates the time before you rang the bell, after you rang the bell. You can listen to it and reflect on the sound that it makes, depending on what the pitch of your particular bell. Some are very deep, some are very light. Either one is fine. But again, you're engaging another sense as you kind of draw yourself into this. At this time, you can here's a simple breathing exercise to try and help you get into that mindset, to get you to slow down and consider things and think in a conscious manner, but also to try and dissuade yourself from getting drawn up in the anxieties and concerns of the day. So here's a breathing exercise you can try at this point. You've had your incense lit, you have some music on perhaps, and in this is called the fourfold breath, and you find this in a lot of different places, particularly in modern witchcraft. You can hear about different breathing techniques. The fourfold breath, it's basically a series of 4 different sequences of 4-second actions. So you're going to be breathing in for 4 seconds, retaining that breath for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, and then being empty for 4 seconds. And you give yourself time throughout that in order to do this fully. And if you need help in thinking per second, if counting is if it's a bit distracting for you, you can go through the elements. There's no problem with that. Think each one of them separately in your mind as you do the actions. Think air, fire, water, earth. And then hold it and think air, fire, water, earth. Exhale, air, fire, water, earth. And then empty, air, fire, water, earth. This is to set kind of a meditation through breathing, and I think it's so important. Meditation is not a conscious exercise. It is a physical exercise, one which you can express and get into using breath, which is a physical and a conscious exercise. but we use it in a different way than standard. And that, I think, helps the mind. And so we have our incense. If you need to top off your incense, that's fine. Not a whole lot of time has passed here, so it's okay. At this point, you would want to add the salt to the water in a conscious manner. A few pinches, doesn't have to be a whole lot. This doesn't have to be special salt. Your table salt is fine. It really is. You want to use what's available to you. That's what a witch does. A witch doesn't have to have a boutique item for everything. Now, having those things and having them set aside for specific purposes, that can be useful to you. Don't beat yourself up for wanting to have that really shiny item, because we're all, in the end, we all like shinies. We all collect things. You're going to want to have something to offer to your deity, to your spirit. You're going to want to have you could use a bit of food. Food is the most common thing. Any kind of food. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a tiny bowl of rice. It can be, you want it to have a significance for you. You don't want to feel cheap. You don't want to offer them uncooked ramen unless it's something that you genuinely enjoy. I'm not going to look down on you. I'm never going to know what you use. But you want to have some food. You want to have a pleasing drink to yourself. It doesn't have to be, often you would see liquor or some sort of spirit being used here, wine, some beer, ale, that's all fine. But it doesn't have to be alcohol. This could be a tea that you make. It could be a juice that you like. All of those are perfectly acceptable. You want to lightly sprinkle incense, meaning waft the incense over your food, over the wine. A small amount of the salt water isn't going to ruin either. It's not like that. You're kind of consecrating these things for their use. And so you're going to have a small other dish. I should have listed all the ingredients and things you needed at the beginning, but that's okay. In the end, I'm not saying this for you to do it in live action. I'm saying this so that you can think about it and then do whatever you'd like to do. So you pour a small amount of food, pour a small amount of wine, you offer a small amount of food, you put these into their own little dish, and as this happens, you can say, "This gift is of and for the gods, from the share that they have bestowed unto me." And you should also have some of this, a small sample of both of them, of what you don't offer them. You should have some of that yourself. And this is the shared meal that you have with the divine. And so at any point in this, if the incense is burned out, you can always light more. And recall, as in this moment, as the incense smoke rises, it is carrying, and place upon that smoke, place upon it your prayers, your wishes, your hopes, your desires, the reason why you are doing this, even if it is just a request. If you're asking for someone to reach out to you, now is a fine time for it. No prayer that is said in earnest can be anything but perfect, and I honestly believe that. After this, if you want, you can give yourself some time to think, you can meditate, or honestly, you can be finished at this time. You can thank the deity or the spirit for their aid and their presence and bid them farewell, and then you can ring the bell and clap your hands, and it's as simple as that from start to finish. And this can be done in any way. It can be done as needed. You can make substitutes in different ways. I myself often, in my own upbringing, ghee or clarified butter, which honestly making some yourself out of common butter isn't challenging. It's a neat thing to do because you can do this with this purpose in mind. I like burning ghee. I have a tiny little ghee lamp. Ghee is a Ghee, if you want to spell it, so you can look it up. You can get a tiny little, brass lamp, and you can burn using little ghee wicks. They sell them, but you don't need these things. A candle is good enough if you want to offer a single drop of something, or burn a simple small thing. That's all perfectly fine. And of course, be careful with fire at any times. Fire deserves our respect. And so, the notes that a person would want to hit in my mind for this simple worship is to wash your hands specifically for this purpose. Be sure that you invite the gods into an environment which is proper for them, meaning you've used sound or scent, a number of different things to delineate this as a separate time and a separate place. You make an offering, and you have some yourself. Both of those are required, I would say. You don't want to do one without the other. It's proper to do both, and you wouldn't want to exclude yourself or obviously them. You are later going to want to dispose of these items in a very conscious way. I understand some folks live in the city and don't have a whole lot of options. As long as you recognize that something, you can't just leave it on a bowl on the mantle. You need to do something with this. And so if you don't have the best way of disposing of these offerings, if you don't have a tree, that's okay. As long as you're thinking about it as you do what you may need to do, that's the best you can do. Don't beat yourself up. And of course, you want to thank them. You want to say goodbye. After all, they may have things that they need to do. And so that's it. That's the entirety of my little simple worship that I wanted to share with you. And yes, what I do at home is very, very similar to this. I don't include a whole lot of other things. I myself like rhymes. I like short spells. You can do a spell as a part of this. I would do that before you make your offerings. Just as, if you have a little charm or a little rhyme or something like that, you could say that before you make the offerings of food, after you've created the space and given yourself an environment where this sort of thing can be more successful, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to have an entire ritual room for this. You can keep it simple. You will find as you do this, you will only want to make it more complicated, and so occasionally it is nice to remove the extra things that you put in and try and get it back to its basics and keep it from getting overly complicated. I think a lot of people get caught up in complication, and they'll start adding correspondences and correspondences upon correspondences, and it becomes a little bit neurotic, I think. But I kind of recognize how, we tend to make things a little more complicated all the time. We tend to always be reaching for more. And some of you may want to be reaching for more. Some of you may be wanting to do more and to be more active and to do all of this stuff, and you're going to be very hard on yourself, but you may not know where to start. Perhaps this is somewhere you could start. Perhaps in the process of doing this and just inviting the unknown guest to come and see you, you'll get a hint. Later on, you'll see a bird feather, and it's an unusual feather, and you do some research and you find out what kind of bird that is, and what does that make you think of? You see a fox one day. Holy moly. What does that mean? What does it mean to you? And it's through researching these little hints that you get. You can ask about it. You can go on. There are a lot of different forums where people ask, they say, is there any special association with tumbleweeds? I keep seeing these bundles of grass blow by. What does that mean? And you could receive a lot of answers. Those answers should only ever serve as clues. They should never be taken as authoritative. You should always run with it and see where it goes. It's possible that it's indirect to what it is. It may be that there's a spirit of the air or a spirit of the sky trying to reach out to you. It may be that it's a vegetative deity, or it may be a spirit which does not have a clear association and historically does not necessarily appear. Or later on you may make a connection and say, holy cow, the wind spirit that always comes to visit me when I'm standing outside all by myself in the dark. It's these little omens, these little auspicious details that stick out to you. All of these are very important. All of these, if you keep seeing a numeric sequence, if you keep seeing, let's suppose it might be 1, 2, 3, 4. If you keep seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 in a variety of different ways, and you start associating that with whenever you find consecutive numbers that grow and increase, there's research to be done. Or just noting and keeping track in your own mind, or just saying, wow, I keep seeing this over and over and over. There are times where perhaps when you see that, your attention is necessary. Something is just trying to get your attention to say, your speedometer says 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a moment later there's a car crash ahead of you. Or there's you need to swerve because you don't want to hit a raccoon. any number of things. What I'm trying to say is that the little things that stick out on your mind shouldn't be ignored. They are always hints. But don't agonize over chasing them all the time. After all, we all live our own busy lives. This is supposed to be simple so that it can fit into yours. And any changes, any modifications that you feel you need to make or you need to make due to practicality. Recently I heard a saying, and I love it. I absolutely love this saying. It's make virtue of necessity. And I interpret that as being what you can work with and what is present, what is necessary for the scenario. Find ways for it to be good. Find ways to find some benefit in it, to find those things to be enheartening. Make a virtue of it. I like that saying. In any case, this is a little less than half an hour, but sometimes they're going to be a little bit. I hope all of you are well, and I hope to talk to you soon. Once again, this is Sassafras. This is the Heart of Witchcraft podcast. On Twitter, I can be reached at heartwitchcraft, and I'm heartofwitchcraft@gmail.com. I love hearing from you guys. I've gotten a number of different messages. I've responded to most of them. I'm going to try and stay on top of that. We'll see how it goes. But until then, blessed be.